So hi, I'm Gerald, COO of iCandy Interactive. We have an interesting panel here today because we get to go behind the scenes with at two levels, right? One is with a VC and the investee, and then with the investee or with the company who is working with the investee of the VC. Aha, I got it right. So I'll just do a quick introduction before we go a little bit further. So Irene is the co-founder and managing partner at DNC Capital. They've invested in across the ecosystem of games in Indonesia for companies in the games ecosystem. And their capital contribution comes from both China and Indonesia. And Kris over here is a veteran of the Indonesian games industry, very active in the community. He's the co-founder and CEO of Toge Productions. He's the founder and CEO of Toge Productions. And they have notable titles like Infectinator and some.
Now we are moving to publishing. So yes. There's a very cool game called Ultra Space Battle Brawl, and She and the Lightbearer, who just won an award done by Mojiken. Yes. So it's part of our publishing ecosystem as well.
Yeah, so you can see Kris's company has morphed from a developer to a developer publisher, right? And they've published Eka's game. So Eka is the CEO of Mojiken. And Mojiken just won the Indie Prize Award, right? Yay. So yeah. So we actually see fulfillment of investment right here, right? So,
which is why I'm smiling, right?
Mission accomplished, right?
Mission accomplished, yeah. So I guess we don't have many of these panels where we get to see both sides of the coin, where the VC sits with the investee, and we get to hear some interesting things in terms of how what started this working relationship between the parties. So maybe we'll go right into it. Perhaps we can hear from Irene and DNC, just to give a bit of context to the overall picture. Why start DNC Capital, and what is DNC's interest in the games industry? Why is it doing the end-to-end picture? So yeah.
Sure. Hi everyone. A little bit of background about DNC. DNC stands for Discovery Nusantara Capital. We started off in Indonesia last year, and very quickly we invested into 6 companies in Indonesia. But we are not only Indonesia focused. We believe that there's no one single country that could flourish by itself. We are more looking into the regional segment of the entire game sector. So the reason why we started off with Indonesia is very simple. It's because first, I'm Indonesian. And second is because we see a lot of good talents and good companies in Indonesia that are not really well taken care of in a way that they just need a break. All of them really amazingly good talents. All they need is just one single break, and they'll be able to make it at a regional and even at a global level. Toge is one example that we are very happy with. And I guess the first time we met with Toge, we click immediately. So unlike most venture capital funds where we come in, and traditional VC funds, where we come in, we invest, and then we go back and pray and hope that the company is going to grow, what we hope to do is we hope to be a strategic investor to each and every companies that we've invested in. So a few things that we do. Gerald earlier mentioned that our investors include the ones from China as well. Actually, the reason why we want to have the Chinese investors is also because so that there's a knowledge transfer between China to Indonesia and the region. We all know that China is now the top in the world, and we want them to teach us their secret sauce and also help our game developers in the region to grow to that scale. Because right now, it's time for the region to shine. It's time for Indonesia to shine. I think that's the reason why, a brief background.
Yeah, so to sum up, your approach really is a cross-region one, because you personally also see the flow between China and Indonesia, and perhaps Indonesia outwards to the rest of the world. And you have a regional mandate to support the ecosystem as well. And you're very strategic in the sense that I notice you're quite comprehensive in your portfolio coverage as well. So strategic both in terms of the end-to-end that you cover, as well as plugging in different regions and connecting them together. Okay.
Maybe I'll touch on a little bit on the portfolio companies that we invested in. We invested in Touch10, which is in mobile. We invested in Toge, which is in PC. We also invested in a game media company, Duniaku, which is the top game media company in Indonesia. A lot of people in the region might not know it or might not heard of it. The reason is because it's in Bahasa. But we believe that Indonesia, with such a huge market, we need to make sure that there's a game media to support it. And our game developers obviously need a media to support it. So that's the reason why we invested in Duniaku. And Duniaku is also the host for Game Prime, which is the largest game developers conference in Indonesia. Chairman by Kris as well, who's going to talk a little bit more about it. So we are very community focused, and on top of it, we also believe that esports is on the rise. That's why we also invested in Revival TV. The other two companies are not gaming related, they are more marketing related. We believe that in the region, especially in Indonesia, a lot of the companies, game developers, they grow without any marketing budget. They would be able to grow, and they've grown significantly. However, they'll be able to grow even better if there are some marketing tools that are available to them. And so the two companies that we invested in, Cofera and Promogo, we believe that these two would be able to support the game development, ecosystem development in Indonesia. Yeah.
So just a little bit before we go on to Kris and Eka, so it seems like you have a longer time. What's your time horizon like for your investments?
We have a 3 + 3 + 2 years approach, but all our investors believe in a long-term approach. However, I think now with the technological developments, and the world is pretty much a flat surface, right? And so we don't think that we need to wait that long. And the portfolio companies that we work with, they are extremely good, extremely fast. We invested in Toge when?
I forgot actually, Jonathan. You probably know better, but early this year, or very early this year, like.
Yeah.
Yeah, around January, February, February,
January,
February,
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
we announced it on February.
So yes, we announced it in February, and at that time, I don't think Toge has started a publishing unit, right? Yeah. And very quickly, they morph into a publishing unit, and we don't really bug them. They do things on their own, but we try to advise where possible. We try to open doors and open network where possible, because again, we don't want to be the one who just provide the money, because money is everywhere. It's all over the place. But what we hope, what we want to provide is smart money that could bring them to the next levels. So if there are any game developers or startups here, my one advice to you would be, money is everywhere. You might need it urgently, but make sure you don't get the money that are not too smart. I think Kris can elaborate on that later on. Thank you.
Okay, so right now we'll just go on a little bit into the early stages, right? So who approached?
Okay,
right?
so it's a funny thing, because like Toge, even like in our earlier days, we are not very active in finding investors, because we believe in, like, we need to build our own company to be sustainable and survive on our own without any external help. If we can do that, then it's fine for us. But if we can get an external help, that would boost, basically accelerate us. So the funny story is, actually, we met with DNC's investor, I would say, our parent company, before I met Irene. So they came from China. We met at our office. We talked, and at first talk, we feel like it's not a very, like a very doesn't really fit with us, because it's only like a brief meeting, right? So we basically we ended the talk, and that's it. Nothing happened after that. But then, like, suddenly I get an email from Irene, and because previously we met with people from telecom, was it like the telecom investment? We did like some startup pitching and stuff like that, just because we want to try it. And then apparently we kind of impressed the people from telecom and stuff like that. So they recommended us to Irene, and then Irene contacted me, and I was like weird, like, didn't I just met with somebody from the same company? Why are they coming back? And then I just like, okay, let's just meet again, and maybe we could discuss something deeper and further. And turns out when we met, and I basically explain our company vision and mission and what we believe in and what we're doing, and basically what we're going, our direction. And basically she understands like what I'm basically what my vision is and everything in that. So kind of clicked. Yeah. So after that, it's like smooth sailing. So yeah, it's kind of, you know, like I would say like life what goes around, like what you didn't plan could. Yeah, universe conspired. Like things happen and then there's a chain reaction and it could lead to a positive thing. Yeah.
So just a quick question for you. How long have you been in operation before? How long had you been in operation before the investment?
So Toge production started in 2009 unofficially because I started as a hobby in our garage, and then we make games. Back then it was like flash games because that was like, you know, Facebook flash games and stuff like that. So that was like the height of the game era, and it was very accessible for Indonesian developers because there's no AAA or any, you know, game company in Indonesia. The industry is basically not established yet. So I think our entry was that flash games, and then 2009 we as a hobby, and then it turns out like, hey, this could turn out like a real, you know, real business. We're making real money here. So around 2010 I decided to like, okay, let's incorporate a company, make this like a real business, and start working on this full time and do it seriously. So after 2009, basically our focus has been on sustainability. So we want to survive. So I want this company to survive long term. And basically we always try to avoid getting money from outside if we don't need it. So we always focus, and if we can do it ourselves, then why ask, you know, help from someone that we don't know? And sometimes they could, like Irene said before, like smart money. Like if they're only giving you like money without the smartness, then that could break your company, right? So we don't want that to happen. So basically I met with several investors, VC, you know, potential investors in the industry, but I've been very picky. So yeah, very, very picky, super picky.
So would you say that the capital more or less was more to grow rather than to get everything sort of the pipeline in order, right?
Yeah. So our focus on getting the investment is basically to accelerate. So we've already proven like we've done this on our own, and you can without any help, yeah. And then you can see the trajectory and the growth. So without the money, we keep on surviving and we keep on growing. But imagine if you can inject like acceleration, like, you know, rocket fuel, and then we can be this big in a very short term, you know, like. And then on top of that, Irene is actually giving us not only the money, but also like the network and then all the, you know, knowledge from China, which is very hard for Indonesians to, you know, get access to because we don't have the connections, we don't know the people, and because of this collaboration happen, then things start, you know, starts flying and stuff like that. Yeah.
So just a keyword, rocket fuel. Let's remember that, because that's an important part of the investment process. So we'll come back to the term rocket fuel a little bit later. Now we'll go a bit to Irene's side, right? Because it seems like Kris was really picky about who to work with. So how did you convince Kris that, hey, you know, we have what it takes to work together and build the company?
I guess it was pure chemistry, I would say. So when I first entered Kris' office, I remember it wasn't very friendly. So they smile, you know, people smile, but then it's like, what the hell are you doing here? That kind of smile. So I'm like, okay, let's see. This is not going to be easy. What's going on? And when we sat down, we just communicate. I guess the key point is communications, yeah. And Kris was very open in terms of explaining to us what they try to achieve and that they want to achieve. And for us, the NC, again, as mentioned, we are very community focused. We believe that if the community grows, our portfolio companies will grow, our investors' money will come back and we'll have amazing returns. That's how it works. If we only focus on returns, then it's too single-minded, and we try not to do that. And so we shared that visions with Kris, and when we found out that Kris is also the founder of Game Association, sparks happened not across the investments between us, but more of what we could do together to grow the Indonesian ecosystem, and that excites us. And it becomes a very exciting discussion. And so It was very easy to flow into immediately. Yeah, after the first meeting, we just said, okay, let's do due diligence, and it was just like that. It was really, really quick because, again, anyone who's here who attended Honma-san's presentation earlier, the key message is you have to be very clear of what is it that you want to achieve. Your current game might be a big hit, but as investor, we are investing in your company, in your team. So what's important is if you know what you want to do with your team, not only your game is just one of the products, right? But you could create multiple products. And if the team knows exactly where they want to go, then the investors, the strategy investors will be able to see how they could help you to achieve the point B. And with Kris as well, we didn't promise anything. We just said that, Kris, this is a network we've got. If you want to use it, let us know. There's no promises that we're going to get you there, but we will do our level best to get you there. And I think we've been doing that. Our dynamics is very strong. I mean, we become friends actually. So Kris and Joe over there, they sometimes have silly discussions, and I would somehow just jump in and
all the time, right?
Yes, try to make sure that this husband and husband do not fight and get into a divorce. So it has evolved into that. So it's not only an investor dump the money and pray you have to grow or just push this company to go to the next level immediately, but I guess we have a common understanding that the urgency is there. We've got to do it now, and we've got to do it fast. Let's do it together. Yeah.
Maybe just to add a little bit, I think one of the reasons why we really clicked is because we have the same passion in growing the Indonesian game ecosystem, because that has been my passion since the very beginning when I first started. Like in Indonesia, there's a lot of talent, a lot of good teams that create really good products, but because they're they live in like small towns like Kediri and like Malang, Salatiga, even like the cities outside Jakarta like Surabaya, they didn't get the same opportunities as people in Jakarta. And we basically have to, if we didn't help the community or the ecosystem, these talents will disappear. Not because they're not good, because they're good, but they don't have the opportunities and they don't have access to like funding and how to manage projects, consultation on how to make that product becomes really good and commercially ready. And it's sad to see if good talents disappear, right? So I really want to grow the ecosystem, and Irene as well, and that's why we really clicked. And especially when I proposed like, hey, I have this publishing plan to help these studios, because I believe they have what it takes to create awesome products that could go global and become like huge hits. Because what we're seeing right now is like all the the indie developers that get the attention is usually from the States, like UK or Europe, some are from Australia, but all the like Asian, like Southeast Asian countries, they're like, the journalist doesn't even look at them. They just like pass them by. But we actually have a lot of like great products, good, awesome games that just didn't get the attention. Okay. So that's what we're trying to bridge and basically, bring all of these things to the surface.
Okay. So just coming back a little bit, because I have a short summary and a little bit of a question for you. So that I think you mentioned the urgency, and that's where the rocket fuel comes in, because the funds that Irene provides really is that rocket fuel for you to grow. I have a question a bit more, just to touch on your story a bit more as the entrepreneur, and then we'll move on to Eka as well. So for Kris, so I noticed that the story really is a pipeline one, right? You're building this larger pipeline for the benefit of the community in Indonesia. So when did this community, this passion to work towards a community vision, how did it come about? Like, why?
Yeah. So when I first started, working in the game industry. So that was back in I forgot, like 2006. There's basically there's only like a couple of game companies in Indonesia, and they're like very well hidden. Like they hide themselves, and I don't understand why. Like you should be proud. Like there's a studio called Matahari Studios. They started back in '98. And they've been working on like projects with Electronic Arts, making Need for Speed. Like they do all the 3D models for the cars and everything. if I know that, I would be proud as an Indonesian knowing that there's an Indonesian company doing this, but they hide themselves. I don't know why, but they should be telling people like, hey, we're doing this. Indonesia is capable of doing this. But they hide themselves, and then the community is like very underground, and it's very hard for like people to jump into the game industry in Indonesia because they don't know where to start, like where to talk, and there's no support system ready. So that's when I thought like I want future generations to get the the opportunity to make great games and how do you say it? Like make Indonesia in the map, right? So I thought like, okay, we need to fix this. So I started making an event called Game Developer Gathering. It started as just a gathering event in a cafe, just game developers talking each other, just sharing, showcasing stuff, sharing, and it grew. It turns out like there's a lot of people are interested in games, but because they never have any meetings like this, they couldn't meet each other. But now that they're meeting each other, they could actually start collaborating, and we see that it becomes a tremendous growth. So that the event that becomes like a small gathering event with 20 people in a cafe started as becomes like a conference with 100 people. So that was around 2011, and then the next year becomes like 200 people, and then the next year becomes 600 people, and now like last year we have like almost 5,000 people in the conference. It becomes like so huge, and people like even like parents like in Indonesia, parents are always saying like games are evil. Those are satanic things. You shouldn't play games. And then because we have these events, now parents can see like, whoa, games actually can be a positive thing for my children, and having my kids working in the game industry is not a bad thing. So it's actually a job, right? Yeah, it's actually like educating people as well. So there's like a chain reaction. So going back to your question, like when it started, it's actually started when I was in high school. When I play games, I'm like inspired, like wow, games could take you to a different world. But there's no game industry in my country. Why is that? So I want to build that game industry in my country. So I want to jump into the game industry. So that's how it started. Yeah.
Thank you. So just to recap a bit, the support system wasn't there, and there was a burning desire for you to actually sort of bring up that support system, and that first means of doing that was just to meet other game developers, and it sort of grew from there because there was this pressing need for that support ecosystem, and since then it has evolved a fair bit into a more comprehensive support system, and now you have the relationships that enable you to actually put Indonesia on the map with what you've been doing, both as a business and together with the community. Is that cool? All right, so maybe we'll move on a little bit to the story between you and Eka before we get into some of the technical stuff, if there's time for that. So how did this relationship come about?
Maybe should Eka start?
Okay. So actually, it's a funny story, right? It's kind of like a snowball thing, I guess. So I think it's around early 2015, I guess. So yeah, so it started as we have on 2015 Mojiken make some like an internal upgrading program. So we dropped all of like outsource work projects and all of that stuff, and then we decided to like make the game for ourselves. As probably you don't know that 100% of Mojiken is actually an artist. So no programmer at that time. So we heavily depends on contract work to sustain our life. So yeah, and that around that time, because we get so focused on contract work, we got like we kind of miss our identity as a game studio. So okay, let's drop all this stuff, all this work, and then let's just try to make a game ourselves. So we educate ourselves with a game engine called Construct. So it's kind of like a drag and drop game engine, very easy and intuitive. Even us, an artist, can make a game with it. So we make ourselves, each one of us, a game, and then we bundle it. We bundle it as a physical release. And then we start to selling it. We open a pre-order, and yeah, we didn't expect that one of the person that bought the Mojiken Camp bundle is Kris, and I think you're very excited with the content that we with the game that we make, right? And then so we met at GDG, Game Developers Conference in Surabaya, and he's one of the speakers there. And then he just like, I don't know, is it you just have, you know, like thinking it earlier, or at that time you have an idea and then
it's funny because like actually when I've been Facebook stalking Eka actually, so
no
really like when the first time I met him was Casual Connect 2012 probably, and his game he brought a flash game called Fam's Revenge. It's
2014, right?
No, 2012 I think. It was a long time ago.
3 years ago.
2014. Anyway. So the story goes like this. Like when I look at the game, I'm very impressed with the art, right? Like the art is wow. And then like we exchange contacts, you know, like we keep in touch, you know. I follow his Facebook and stuff like that, and I also follow the studio's Facebook, right? And every time they release like a screenshot of just like a personal work, it's not even like their you know, commercial work. It's like personal hobby. Like I'm doodling this because I'm bored with my project, whatever. And then like, whoa, man, this is like super polished. This is like super awesome. Like, why aren't you making this as a full game? Why are you working on that project for another company that, you know, give you very small, you know, returns? So I just keep on following his projects and everything. And then when they do the pre-order stuff, I'm very excited. Like, I'm buying this. I'm buying this. So Game Developer Gathering Surabaya happened. I went there and I picked up the copy. And then they were showcasing Ultra Space Battle Brawl, but it was like the early, super early build. And the line was, I don't know, like it filled the room, and everybody was screaming when they do like tournament.
Right?
Yeah. And it really shows, right?
Yeah. Actually, even if the show is closing down, we're still there, right?
Yeah.
The tournament is still going on. So yeah.
People won't go home. When the conference is finished, you know, the lights are turned off and everything. People are still like that. So it proves that this game, this team has that, you know, pizzazz. You know, has that X factor. And so we talk like, hey Eka, what are your plans? Like, what are you going to do? Like, what are you working right now? And then he told me, and then basically we kind of he basically kind of curhat tuh bahasa Inggris apa ya? What's like poured his heart out. So he tell me like and basically like the problems, like, hey, you know, the Indonesian game industry is like these are the problems that we're facing, like. And then I realized, like, I've been very lucky living in Jakarta because I have that, you know, the access to all of the opportunities are there. But people in Surabaya, they don't get that, like, even though they have that potential. So basically, okay, I asked, like, let's do something, let's collaborate. So we started an initiative called
Koalisi Kemakmuran.
Koalisi Kemakmuran means like what?
Prosperity Coalition.
Prosperity Coalition. So they come up with a name anyway. So so basically it's our pilot project. So basically we want to test out like how can we help other developers
by working with them.
By working with them, because we haven't, you know, there's nothing like this ever happened before in Indonesia. So let's try something, and their team is full artists. So they need programmers. So and then I met another studio called Imagine Interactive. Dennis is actually here somewhere.
He's sick.
Oh, he's sick. I'm sorry. So yeah, he has a team full of programmers without artists. So their games are technically sound, but the art sucks. His game, the art is amazing. Okay, no, I'm sorry, Dennis. Anyway, like his team is the art is amazing, but they couldn't finish the product because they don't have the technical capability, expertise. So, okay, let's marry these teams together, right? And Toge is there becoming like the, I don't know, the matchmaking or something. So
you're like a Tinder for
Tinder for game devs. Maybe actually I should make a startup for that. Like Tinder for game dev. That's actually pretty good. Anyway, like so we start a project and we actually find before I haven't met Irene, so we need an access to fund this collaboration. So I already have contacts with Armor Games from the United States. We've been working together a long time, making Flash games, and they're also pivoting to Steam and mobile. Now, and I asked them like, hey, I have this idea of making supporting Indonesian game devs. What can you do? Can you help us? And then they said like, okay, let's I have this project. I need to make a mobile game. Can you handle it? So you guys do all the design, do everything, just pitch us the idea, and then we'll fund you. But the funding is not big. It's only just a couple of $1,000s. But yeah, just a development fund, a very small development fund. But that's enough for us to start, right? So we set up this collaboration. Basically, I just want to test: can we work with these guys? Can they become trustworthy before we sync our, before we slept together? Anyway, yeah. So yeah, so that's how it started, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and then after that coalition, right? And then he contacted me. Hey, Ka, do you want some funding? And then we just like, are you serious? Yeah, because it's a unique story because that was happened before you got fund from DNC, right? Yeah, have a discussion, but haven't we settled the deal.
We
haven't
settled the deal.
Yeah, and that was very like a strange case, because Toge itself is a game developer, so a game developer becomes an investor. Yeah, that's kind of
new. Right?
Yeah, new. It's kind of strange actually, but yeah, I think it's at that time that was like a logical, logical step, because before that happens, actually we kind of like have some like a chemistry, good chemistry. Yeah, he's dating with Joe actually. Yeah. So that chemistry was built very close, and then the chemistry become trust, I think, and we both have some same vision and same, I think, I don't know,
ideals.
Yeah, ideals about how the indie game should be.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Notice how they completed that sentence together. Yeah.
It rhymes.
They were just looking at each other.
Yeah.
They weren't even looking at me.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so this is actually pretty interesting, because I think one just an observation that there is very, very obviously the trust seems to flow actually through this whole relationship, and there is that thing where the mutual support is available, as you can see actually between all the stories. So the interesting thing from Kris's perspective is that you had actually figured out some of the formula. You had also actually figured out some of the relationships and the route to market already, and you were in a position to work with Eka to be able to do that. And this also happens in the absence of community, not community, but the support infrastructure, right? So I guess then maybe we'll shift a bit more to this side of the picture. So with Irene, what was your? I noticed that you have the agenda to support the ecosystem. So what did you think of what was your initial view on this relationship and them completing each other's sentences? No, I mean, what was your initial view on them actually establishing this business relationship together?
I feel like a parent approving their marriage, you know. But anyway, this is the way the NC look at it. We look at Toge as a company that's big enough. It's a very big enough company for us to, it's ripe for investment, right? It's ripe to be married to someone else. But there are a lot of other companies that are smaller in scale because they have not gotten the break that they should have, or if they are given the break, then they would be the Toge potentially, right? For Eka, for example, Eka lives somewhere in Surabaya. Now, Surabaya is one of the biggest city in Jakarta, but you can imagine if, in Indonesia, sorry. And you can imagine if it's a game developer. We know of game developers who live in the village, who live off the paddy field that he owns outside his house. We know of those kind of programmers. And they don't have the break that they need, right? They have to make sure that they survive. And being a game developer, you might not have a very long runway, especially if you don't have the supports from your family. So for us, when we look at Toge, we see that this could be the champion that could help us to build the ecosystem. Yes, no pressure, yeah? And we want to build the ecosystem. So the moment he mentioned about Mojiken, and it's a lot of people say, I want to support the ecosystem, I want to do this, I want to do that. But I firmly believe that action speaks louder than words. So the moment we spoke to Kris, we got excited, hoo-ha and all that. But I do want to put it like to actions that please do support Mojiken, and we actually refer some companies to them as well because they are smaller, but they've got the potentials to grow big. So they're not in our investment space. So we went to Kris, we said, could you look at these companies? Please help, because we need more companies that could grow together. So the smaller companies that are not within our space, we pass it on to Kris to sort of mentor. And now that he has established his publishing firm, publishing side of the business, it's easier for him because for us, we are strategic investors, right? For Kris is a strategic publisher. They don't just take games, correct me if I'm wrong, yeah? They don't just take games and publish it. They're not distributors. They take games, they see how they could improve the games to make sure that it's acceptable so that there's no question about it, it'll be a hit. And then they'll release it to the market. Sometimes as an investor, I'll be like, Kris, make sure that's quicker, man, deadline. But I do understand his views. He wants to make sure that we need an OCD. We need someone who really knows what the market needs. And a lot of people don't have that access simply because they don't have the experience. And I think Eka could testify for that, yeah, after your games is being published. Yeah.
The game is being published.
Have anything there?
And for us, right, if you see this chemistry, it's because every time that we invest in a company, first line that we say is, welcome to the DNC family. Because this is the culture that we in our venture capital, in the VC, in the NC have. In the office, it's very family-oriented, so to speak. When we work, we work. When we shout at each other, we do shout at each other. But then we don't really say that, bye, I don't care about you. So we do care a lot about each other. And all of us, we do have similar visions of what we want to achieve. That's why we are pretty close, right? Yeah.
So for Kris's perspective, having accepted investment and moved into this larger picture of publishing, how's your time sort of split up right now between, because you're also a great game developer, so how do you split your time up?
So my main interest is will always be at making great games. So of course I couldn't do it by my own, right? So that's why we started basically adding people that are really good into our team. And for example, like Jonathan, he's like, basically he runs the more logical, like calculative risk management side of the company, while I do the more like wild things. I want to take this risk and jump whatever. So we kind of balance each other out, right? And then other than that, we also for the publishing division, of course, we need to have people that are good in marketing, good in PR, and then good in actually polishing the projects that we're going to publish, right? So we find those people, the people that are very exceptional in the Indonesian, space, and basically we ask them like, hey, would you be interested in joining us, because we have this vision, and we want to do this for Indonesia, and probably, hopefully, in the future for the region, right? But we approach them. We have already several people in our minds, and basically when we told them like our vision, it clicked as well. So they join ours. So basically we split not really split, yeah. We share the workload, and everybody is supporting each other. So how it works in our company, for example, when we want to publish games, Jonathan would be the hunter. He would go out into the field and scout projects. Like, hey, look at these, awesome teams. And then he built relationship with studios like Eka, like other studios like Agate and everything. And he built like a network of information. And then basically from that network of information, he could gather like, oh, this studio is struggling, this studio needs help. And then he comes back to me and gives that information like, Kris, this studio needs help. Okay, look at this. And then we looked at it. Okay, so what are the potentials? What kind of project they're working? Can we find? Can we justify, jumping in and helping them? And then if we can find that reason to help them, and then we start building a plan and a strategy, and then we approach those teams. And if they decided to join into our like publishing and basically the whole family of Toge, we share our resources like our marketing, our PR, our project manager, and even like artists and programmers could jump in and help them as well. So that's how we built this synergy. Yeah.
I guess to sort of make it simpler is he's the man in the house. Toge is the mama of the house, so he will know whatever gossips that happens in the country or whatever that happens in the industry and come back and feed it to us. But one interesting point that I'd like to touch on what Kris has mentioned is that Kris mentioned about shared resources where you could use the marketing and project managers and so on and so forth. Can you imagine if you are a small indie studio and you want to do some marketing, you won't have a product manager, for example, and you won't have a marketing executive, for example, or a PR specialist, for example, because you don't have the scale. But what Toge is providing is that we can share these resources because they have the scale and they have access resources that they could help us. On the same note, that's the same way as how DNC operates as well, whereby we do provide supports to our portfolio companies, legal, for example, that Joe has been very happy with. So a lot of game studios, when you guys start up something, I don't think legal is the top of your mind, right? Contracts, oh man, it's so difficult, what the hell is this? And you won't think of hiring a legal person because it's expensive, right? And Huyen here, I think, can testify for that. But what we try to do is we engage legal persons and we share the resources amongst the portfolios. So each of them pay a very, very small amount that's even below the minimum wage, but they get the work done. They got it professionally done. And next step, we want to do accounting and other supporting business supports that's required by any businesses, including game development, game studios. So I guess we operate along the same models, and I just realized this as he was speaking this, and that's how sync we are. Again, the key is communications. But another thing that I forgot to mention just now is Kris invested in Mojiken, right? Because Mojiken has a lot of potentials, as can be seen in Casual Connect this time around. The next step that DNC will do with Kris support and our portfolio company support is we will do an incubator as well in Indonesia. But incubator will not be a country focus. We hope that it's going to be a regional focus because there are a lot of talents within Southeast Asia. I think the whole world is looking at Southeast Asia as the next big hit. It's the huge market. But one thing that we would like to deliver as Southeast Asian is that Southeast Asia is not only a great talents, but not only a great market to penetrate into, but we also have massive great talents. And Southeast Asian are extremely humble because that's a culture that we have. But I urge every Southeast Asian here to sort of join forces. You might be from Thailand, Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia, anywhere you are in. Let's join forces and let's showcase what we are capable of, because I think this is the time, because the market is entering the Southeast Asia. It's time for us to showcase what we have. And then from DNC, we know that a lot of people find us odd, like, you don't talk like a VC. But it doesn't matter. What we want to do is we want the industry to grow, because if the industry grow, I believe that the guy sitting next to me could be the next unicorn of Southeast Asia. Right, no pressure. But that's what we believe in, and what we want to do. We'll start with Indonesia, because that's 50% of Southeast Asia population from Indonesia. But we are very keen to start on incubators, and we're looking for partners through other regions that we could partner with.
Thank you. So if we had to sum up a bit of the from the end to end, so Eka is plugging into essentially the system that Kris, the infrastructure that Kris has developed over time, together with Joe, and this combined system, and then Kris is tapping into Irene's network and system as well. Rocket fuel, yes, and plus the rocket fuel to make this whole rocket ship go up. So essentially, this is a very meta type of concept. You're tapping into this, you're tapping into this, and it's all linked. The whole ecosystem is linked, right? And hopefully you can connect with, I think with Kris's audience, its current audience, it's more the Steam audience with the Western markets. And with Irene, that opens up the Chinese audience and some of the Asian side audience as well. And hopefully this shared intel base can then cycle through better products, better channels, more funds, and more companies supported. Is that the sort of bigger picture?
On top of it, we are actually tapping into the Middle East market as well. So we are talking about collaborations with the Middle East and the Finnish companies there. So what we are looking at, although we focus in regional, but we want to open up the network to the global. The world is a flat surface right now. So we are ambitious. We don't know whether we're going to get there, but at least we've got to start with the first step. And as we go along, yesterday I attended Gerald's wife's book launching, Angels of Impact, who says that if you have an 100% intention, and if you want to do it, angels will emerge somewhere. And we believe in the game community, there are a lot of angels that are driven by passion. But one thing that I would like to highlight is passion alone is not enough. Passion plus commitment is guaranteed success. So the question is, you have a great passion, I'm sure. That's why all of us are sitting here. But how committed are we? Kris, what you see is 7 years, yeah, of sweat and blood and tears and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, 7 years. Actually, more than 7 years. It's 8. Even if, yeah, like probably almost 9 years. But yeah, it's a long process, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So just if any one of you just hang on to it, and I believe together we can do something. The point is collaboration. Let's not look inward at what we can do, what our game is, but let's look outward as this is what I can do. Let's collaborate. Because time is limited. Let's showcase something.
Actually, it was a question that I had very early, but then I heard Ma'am from Discovery Nusantara Capital that she's open to collaborating with other Southeast Asian countries. I was gonna ask, like, Kris, are you opening up your Tinder for game developers for Southeast Asian countries? Like, I would always need an artist. Like, I have collaborated with Russian, American, and then now I'm collaborating with someone from London, Nitro. And then we almost collaborated with Eka from Mojiken. Almost. Yeah, almost. But then my father died, so yeah. That was not the right timing back then. So anyway, if you will open up, like finding the right partner for an artist, will you open up to like collaboration between 2 different countries? Will you be open to that? And my second question is, I think you answered, Ma'am, that you will be open to like reaching out to other countries beside Indonesia, and if so, how do we like reach you for that?
So I'll answer the first question. Definitely yes. Let's collaborate. Like, yeah, yeah. So at the moment, because this is our first basic pilot, right? I think it's better for like we test within our reach. So because I'm based in Indonesia, of course, I will test it with the devs in Indonesia. So we'll see how it goes. But definitely our plan is basically not only Indonesia, but the whole region. So basically from the first batch, so Irene invested in 6 companies. Toge published 6 games as our first batch. So from these 6 games, we'll basically it's our first try, right? Because of course we need to learn as we grow. So by looking at these games that we're gonna publish, we'll learn from whatever mistakes or whatever happened, with the good things and the bad things. And if we can learn from that, of course we could step into the next step, which is going to the Southeast Asian region. And definitely, I'm looking forward to collaborate with Barry because I've been following him as well since 2012 or I forgot. Is it 2014?
Guys, if you have
anyway,
Facebook, don't give it to Kris.
Anyway, the casual connect actually really helps connect casually. So I've seen Barry and his work. Like his game is amazing. I would love to work with him in the near future, hopefully. But yeah, we'll keep in touch, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, just to add on what Kris has mentioned, you mentioned artists, right? We from DNC we mentioned what Incubator is now. So the first stage to Incubator is we're gonna gather 2D, 3D artists in Indonesia. We might be creating an academy whereby we'll polish them and give them the route to collaborate with regional partners or even worldwide partners, so that at least exchange of talents could happen. Because exchange of talents, you could have understanding of cultures. I don't think I've mentioned this to Kris, so yeah. We're doing a utopia that will start with that. So the name of the incubator or whatever that we're gonna do in the future will be Utopia. We'll start in Indonesia, perhaps, or depending on whichever region that's gonna start first. On the others of us going into regional, we actually have spoken to the godfather here of the Philippines, Mr. Gabby Dizon. And we'll potentially make a trip to Philippines this year, and we'll visit the game developers, try to understand how the market is, try to understand who the players are, and to see how the collaborations could happen between our portfolio companies and also the other players in the industry in Indonesia, and potentially an investment into Philippines.
So just a bit of commentary on that as well. When you look at Singapore's industry, actually, because Singapore's industry has had that ecosystem sort of support, which has been government funded, and in some ways, I won't comment on the degree of that, but because that infrastructure sort of exists. I had worked for Singapore government before, but it's quite interesting because within Indonesia, there's these pockets where private investors and private companies can come in such a strong manner, and in some ways that sort of create a more sustainable system because it's a ground-up initiative, right? It's not slapped on any ecosystem. It really is the passion, the hard work of the people, plus some good rocket fuel, good connections, cross region connections that help to plug everything into a nice system. Yeah.
Actually, I'll ask a question. Just to bring it a little bit back towards the investment spectrum of things, I think, Irene, if I'm not mistaken, you mentioned that your investment timeline is 3 + 3 + 2. Now, I know that adds up to 8, but what are you really referring to?
8 is a lucky number.
Oh, like that.
No, jokes aside, 3 + 3 + 2 is the industry standards. And we look into 3 years, and then we look at reviewing the companies on how we can help them to get to the next level if they are not in the next level already. If they're in the next levels, then what are we going to do about it? Because a company will grow up to a certain size, and they will continue to grow if, let's say, they have additional fuels, additional collaborators, partner. But we would actually, not that we don't seriously look at them now, but that 3 years timeline is the time when we sit down with our investors and we say that, guys, could you help these guys to go to the next level? What are we going to do about it? And then we extend it for 3 years, and then we extend it to 2 years. The reason why we don't want to do it entirely 8 years is because we want to make sure that we have the eyes on the ball and we want to drag our investor in because we took DNC, we take smart money. We tell our investors that you don't only bring in money, but you have to bring in your network and support. If you do not bring that, then I'm sorry, I can't take the money. So we want them to be involved as well. And one way of us involving them is with that timeline.
Okay, I have one question actually for Kris and Eka. As entrepreneurs, as business owners, as leaders of your teams, what was the most difficult thing when it came to taking on an investment? Whether or not it's the difficult decision or to come to, or the process was difficult. I mean, from your perspective, what did you think was difficult so that people in the room who maybe embark on that journey can prepare themselves? Oh, they look at each other, then they...
I'm trying to think like, well, in my experience, first you have finding trust is quite difficult. You know, like. You
can look at him as you answer.
Yeah. Anyway, it's like you know, like finding when we meet with investors, right? We meet them for the first time usually. Like we never met them before. We don't know what they are, who they are, what their background, how their attitude and everything. So the first impression sometimes can be misleading, or yeah. And then you have to, you know, basically you're gonna take money from them, and then you're gonna give them something back as well, right? That giving that something back could be equity, could be something else, it could be your life, whatever it is. You're giving back something that's really precious, and sometimes, you know, like it's like, you know, finding the right girl to marry. I would say you would be anyway. Like you're gonna give your life to them in a sense, and if they're gonna mess your life, then is the money worth it, right? And are they trustworthy by, you know, are they trustworthy, and can you trust your life to them? That's also, you know, a hard thing to do. So I would say like that's one of the hard parts. And then what else? I think there's a lot of hard parts.
Yeah.
Hard parts. Anyway. I think there's gonna be a lot of bleeps in this, you know, recording.
I think I'm same with Kris actually. So because trust is not built upon one, you know, like on one day, right? Because you have to know how the chemistry works, how they respond with what you do, right? So yeah, how to build that trust into the next level is something that it's not as easy as it is. So yeah, that's the hard part. But after that, everything goes smoothly, I guess.
Yeah. If I may add to it, entrepreneurship, right? We've seen and we've assessed a lot of game studios. The biggest problem is that we met. They want to do everything, and they want to do everything now. It's not going to happen. That's the bitter pill that everyone needs to be aware of, is that you want to know that you want to achieve XYZ, which is high up in the sky. It's okay. Dream is free. We can dream. But what are the building blocks that get us to the stars, to the moon, to the sun? That's what we need to figure out. And when we climb the stairs, we'll fall down, we'll roll down. But do we have the... Climbing the stairs is easy. Getting up after you fall, that's the toughest part. And we've seen a lot of entrepreneurs, the great entrepreneurs, their life is like that. But what we see is, oh, they're at the top. So I've seen one of our portfolio companies that we invested in, amazing guy. He started as a co-founder and a COO. Within 6 months, he's got 2 CTOs left. 2 investors say that, yes, I will put the funds in. And he started off with all the developments, the fund never come in. And finally, his CEO left. So he's a single person. He needs to find co-founders. He needs to find investments. 6 months of the start of the business. So luckily, Angels appears. And he's got a great CTO now. He's got us, who are the investor now, and they are doing very good. They are doing great. It's Promogo. They are doing amazing. But can you imagine if you are that one person, what would happen if you're the quote-unquote partner, wife, or whatever that you have married in through incorporation of the business, turned around and said, you know what, I'm leaving, bye, and just left. And it's not only once, it's 3 times, plus 2 times the investors. But the persistence that that guy had is what made us invest in them. Plus the business model, of course. Every single person who sits here, out there, anywhere in the world, the moment you think of, oh, that's a good idea. Yes, everybody has a great idea. And the moment you think of an idea, millions of people out there will be having the same idea. The question is how much you believe in an idea and how you execute it. Right? If you execute it properly, you execute it in the right time, and your persistence, that's what's going to get you somewhere. And that's the real entrepreneur.
Can I just add a little bit? Because it connects with the 2 panels that were going on yesterday and Honma's presentation, which was just before this. So yesterday when we talked with Gabby, the godfather, who's here today, and Arif from Agate, who's also here today, the back, and Desmond, who was here just a bit earlier. The common thread was the persistence of these guys who've been in the industry for about 9 to even more than that years or so, and the ups and downs that they faced, the different learning points, and then structuring their companies and continuously learning along the way. That was one thing on the persistence. And then with Honma previously, this is just a personal anecdote because Honma was invested in with Inzen, is that he likened the investor investee relationship to a marriage, which is interestingly enough what they've highlighted here. Because I mean, think about it, right? With Irene, it's 3 + 3 + 2 men, right? So you got to be able to take, working with Irene on a regular basis and for their rocket fuel, right? And you have to accept guidance and whatever from Irene. So that's the same case with working with investors and all that. And very often people don't see that, but that's the heart of what goes on. So all very relevant points that were covered through yesterday and today.
He himself is an entrepreneur, by the way.
Oh,
yeah.
I have a question for Irene. So in a venture capital portfolio, for example, if you have 10 investments, probably maybe 1, 2, or 3 of them would be successful, and the rest might either break even, shut down. So the question is, if things aren't going well, if all of Kris's 6 published games don't go well, and you reach that 3-year limit, and the returns aren't there financially. So what's the thought process with working with those teams and entrepreneurs when, things aren't going well?
Thank you, Gabby. It's very forward-looking. I would expect that from a lawyer question, huh? For us, I don't believe that when we invest in the companies, we don't set them to fail. I know that getting a startup to be the next unicorn, the probability is lower than winning a lottery in the States. This is a clear statistics from Hatcher.com. But when we invest in each and every company, we don't look at them as an individual companies. So when you see, why do we invest in a media company, for example? We got questions from Kris, for example. Why do you invest in a media company? The reason is simply because we want to support each other. We want the portfolio companies to be able to support. So having a media company, it will be as good as having a PR companies that will be able to support the rest of the portfolio. We do not set every portfolio that we invest in to fail. If in the end of 3 years or 8 years they fail, then I can't point fingers and say that you screw up, because it's all of us in a team. Right now, I am in a luckier side because I've got 6 portfolio companies and we have more time to look at them. But as DNC grows to a regional level, there'll be more. But the thing will still be the same. Our responsibility as a strategic investors is like, we are like a coach. We don't need people to, I'll be speaking to you, giving advices, you have to listen to me. Well, they hear me. If they don't listen to me, they're not going to implement it. And I might not be right. I'm not a game developer. I'm not a game publisher. And my background is in banking. But if you notice, if you play football, you've got a coach outside the court. They will usually the fatter one, the one who can't even run 100 meters. And the one who's playing in the field are the fitter one, the really handsome, bulky, good-looking guys, right? But the coach are the ones who can see beyond, have a helicopter view, and will be able to strategize and say that, guys, you know what? Maybe you want to do it this way. Maybe you want to do it that way. Now, a coach perspective is what DNC want to be in, because these guys will be very busy and have their heads down in the industry and like, I have to do this and whatnot. But a lot of times they are lost. So the short answer to your question is, we do not set the companies that we invested in to fail. If they do fail, we do take responsibility in it. And we try to be a coach for them. And if let's say anyone who asks us, what's the probability that you are prepared to have your investment fails? The mindset, if I put that on day one, that I would have 50% of my portfolio companies will fail in the end of 3 years or 8 years, they will fail. But the mindset that we have is, this is a personal target, is that I want to be the green hand of the industry. For every portfolio companies that we invest in, we'll invest not only money, but we'll invest time, system, and whatever it takes to get them to the next level. And that's a commitment from us. And again, hopefully it's going to be 99%.
Just to add a little bit, I think what Irene is doing is it really shows like the companies. For example, like if all of the 6 games that we signed failed, it's not going to be the end of the companies. Basically, we work very closely and we communicate to each other very closely. And basically, we always update like, hey, there's a changing of situation, like it's changing winds and whatever. We have to move fast and do this and do that. So we work together to find alternatives to get out of the mess and try to mitigate risks so that the companies wouldn't. So if their initial plan failed, that's not going to be the end. There's going to be another option to do something else and find success. And if that fails as well, there's going to be another one, and another one. So we always work together, and it's really a team effort. Yeah.
I'll just add a bit, because I've worked with Irene on some things before. What I've just observed is Irene also makes the effort to gather the data. So there's data on reference rates of return, and reference rates of returns from different types of companies and different founder profiles, different company profiles, different timelines and all that. So on one side, it's equipping herself with the data that she's one of the most hardworking VCs that I've seen. And also then educating everybody along that pipeline, whether it's her LPs or the companies that she works with on that side of the picture. I think that's quite constructive as well. So all the way around, expectations are managed, and the communication, right, you mentioned just now, and the communication is key. So that helps the overall picture as well. So all moving together.
Irene, does DNC look at any particular stage, early stage, or up to Series A, or deal size?
We look at pre-seed all the way to Series A. But in Southeast Asia, mostly are not at a certain level. So we see, yeah. If there is none, I think, can I have a show of hands of how many game developers are here? Okay, awesome. That's good to hear, because I think Kris, they just started their publishing company, so I just asked him just now, you also take Southeast Asia, right?
Yes,
you want to announce it?
Yeah, so we are opening our publishing division not only for Indonesia, but also for Southeast Asia. And so if you have any games that you really want to collaborate with us, please do come by our booth, or maybe you can just send an email. Yeah, we'll definitely we are looking forward to work with game developers from across the region.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for spending your afternoon with us. We hope you've had a fruitful conference, and we hope to see you again.
Hooray.
Goodbye.